funny slide to start with, right? Okay. So basically, I'm going to move around. Sorry? So just as a, okay. Next, okay. So just as a starting point, when I was studying architecture, I bought a book. And that time we had a lot of bookstores. Now it's only direct Pinterest and this and that and whatnot. And one of my first books which I bought was Norman Foster Roger Sterling. It was the exposed architecture, the Pompidou and all that. It was so fascinating to me. And when I saw that you were here, it's an added thing. I always feel that people who go the extra way to design deserve a lot of applause from the people, because there's such rubbish going on in the world and what people pass as design. So whenever I see good design, and whenever there's a good architect, a fashion designer, whatever it may be, the effort that goes behind it is commendable. And people recognize that, it doesn't go waste. So what I'm going to talk on is basically what sculpture does in our environment. It's a very, you're all stalwarts. I now normally would be talking to students all the time. But just to give you an idea, I didn't study art. I started sculpture directly after school. I went to scrapyards. I started collecting metal. I started welding. So there is no formal education. So whatever I have learned is by experimenting, is by formulating my own disciplines. And from that, I gained knowledge. The sculptures actually taught me what to do and how to move ahead and all that. Okay, so I'll just take you forward. So basically, what I'm saying is, imagine you are in a desert. Imagine you're in a desert where you see miles and miles and miles of only sand. Imagine just walking through to days on. And then suddenly one fine day, you find an oasis. Even before you reach that oasis and you've just seen it visually, your breath pattern changes. You are more calmer. You know that you're approaching something and you have seen something visually which quietens you down. That anxiety dies away. You get into a different frame of mind. Your mind plateaus. And that is what sculpture does to me. So just as a reference and an example, I've taken New York City. This is what Manhattan looks like from the above. It's like a geometrical grid of verticals and horizontals all the way through. Now, when you imagine walking through a city like this, even what you see in elevation is something like this, isn't it? It's only lines. It's continuous lines which are sort of bombarding you day in and day out. And sort of, this is what you see, isn't it? This is what you see. And imagine that within this to me is the desert I'm talking about. This concrete jungle that I'm talking about, the lines which affect you. Now, suddenly imagine that besides of this, and even the Brooklyn Bridge, you see there are more lines. I had photographed this reading between the lines when I put this on exhibition, that the lines don't leave you when you're in a city. Similarly, in Bombay also, but I'm taking New York as a case in point. And this is a very interesting piece which I saw when looking up towards the building. They all sort of curve in. And this one lamppost which was there was actually like a small little oasis. It looked like a small alien which has landed between the buildings and is staring down at you. So what happens is, I think, I am visualizing myself as having a grid. Imagine having absolutely a boring environment, a boring surrounding, a boring existence, like a grid which is just a confirming sort of thing. Suddenly, you come across some sort of music. Immediately your mind reacts to it and it takes a little break. And then you come across some greenery. It further gives you a break. You come across some art. It again gives you a break. The whole idea of seeing a movie or going out in the open is that your grid-like mind, which is sort of completely accustomed to no rhythm and or sort of a dead trap sort of a movement, gets into this playful mode. Even literature, or be it even a travel. So travel is the best form of that. Basically, the idea is to give your mind a break. And what happens is then you sort of get into this very comfortable sort of an environment when you see art, basically. Now, to me, even something like the pigeon sitting on the pole over there broke this grid-like pattern, and it gave me sort of an enjoyment to sort of check out as to what is happening, and it broke the grid. Similarly, you see that? Suddenly you're walking into this deadpan glass and concrete structure and you come across something like this. Even ignore the color. Just imagine that even if the color was not there, just the swirls, just something that has broken away from the regular gives your mind a break. And that is the importance, I feel, of art in our concrete jungles today. It is unfortunate that we don't have that much in our city, but if you study New York, if you even according to me, one of the cities that has the best kind of art out in the open is Mexico City. Surprising, but it has absolutely the most phenomenal art out in public places. And even Columbus himself is enjoying sort of, and people see him and they sort of, it's like a break. Imagine looking at this facade without this sculpture. So immediately these things gives your mind a mini vacation. This particular piece out near the Rockefeller Center did the same. Of course, the colors added to it. That joy when you see a little bit of change form, a little bit of change color, always adds to it. And nowadays, we are living in the selfie era, isn't it? I mean, everyone wants to take selfies. I get so irritated when I go to historical sites and I see people not photographing the sites but themselves against the sites. And it is like, to me, the Cloud Gate, which Anish Kapoor did in Chicago, is one of the finest examples of outdoor sculpture there is. Humans love seeing themselves in mirrors. And when humans see themselves in contorted mirrors like this, and they see the environment around them contorted, it attracts them more. There's something about your own reflection which attracts you, and Anish Kapoor sort of got this right and created this monstrous bean, which is actually called the Cloud Gate, and he made sort of an absolute impact. Whenever a person lands in Chicago, the first place he heads is over here. It's become so famous out there. So using these reflections, I saw one more of piece like that, which is the signaling hand of the Sheikh. This is at the Museum of the Future. Again, so reflective that people want to stand there and see what it looks like. Now, what the artists have done here is they've caught the nerve of the public. They've caught what looks good in the environment and what would give joy to the person to see. Coming closer to home, some of my own pieces. So this was commissioned by a bank which had completed 75 years. And this is a 15-foot bronze bull which I've done in Worli. And if you see the rear end of the bull, by the way, it's the bull from the Indus Valley civilization. The rear end of the bull is actual, as if it's real form, that's when it started. The center moves into the machine age where you see the rivets and the plates, and then it comes into computer age where you see the form like that. So even the bull had 3 stages, and that's what it is. And I love my figures very powerful. I don't do sort of mild figures, so that because I feel that the environment requires something to charge the people, for people to be able to see and get strength from it, you know? The flamingos. This is in a dreary part of Mumbai, which is like the back road. And now it will, of course, get more famous with the ocean link that has just been opened. So this is in an area which has no color at all. Normally, I would never put color on my sculptures, but these 17-feet flamingos, I just thought that they required a lot of bright color to stand out because they can be seen from 3 areas. One is from the road, one is from the ceiling, and one from the train. So immediately, it gets sort of accustomed to that. Another thing I found is, then when you put your sculptures out in public, the area gets known because of that. Not only sculptures, it could be any monument. They get known. So for years together, when I put my dolphins at Worli, the police started calling it the Dolphin Island. You know, so people associate with that. I remember in Marbella, in ages back, you have the coastline and you've got several streets connecting the main road. And each street at the junction of the main road had a sculpture. So people, the tourists, would never remember the names because it was in Spanish, but they would remember the sculpture. They would remember the artwork and then navigate towards that. And it's an important part of mapping as well. These are the dolphins I'm talking about. So normally people ask me, does the client suggest what you have to make, or do you see the space and react? Normally I see the space and react. But here the client said, I want dolphins. That's what he said, the first meeting. So I figured out, I said, it's near the ocean, it's playful and all that, so why not? Just in case he had told me make a red Indian, I wouldn't have, completely out of context, just giving you an idea. So here, it's steel. I use steel because of the reflective nature of the dolphins. This one's in Bangalore. It's just to do with freedom of thought. It's for an IT company, and it's outside. And the reason I did the framework was because there's a lot of interesting buildings there which have dark facades. And I thought instead of doing a solid sort of a piece, why don't I do something transparent, which sort of, we talk about computer framework and frame diagrams and all that. So I thought of doing something like that with that human flying out from the top, just denoting the freedom of just expressing oneself and letting oneself go out into the open. This fellow is a 20-feet cantilever. I love playing with balances. As you know, I love mobile sculptures. So this one is a cantilevered sculpture in Bangalore again. It's called Off to Work. Now, this particular, he's got an iPhone in his hand as well. See that? The stainless steel iPhone and the bag and all that. And the whole idea was, just to give you an idea, if I had done a full platform there and his rear leg was also on a platform, on a pedestal, it would have completely killed the sculpture. I had to make it floating, so I've done this large cantilever. Now, again, just an interesting point. When I put this sculpture and I titled it Off to Work, the client said, this doesn't look like off to work. It looks like he's going home after a Friday evening or for a weekend, you know? So interpretations matter. Over the rainbow. This one's done in the university building park. Again, somewhere where children sort of keep going. And I thought, why not add a little color in terms of the rainbow? And somewhere over the rainbow, it reminds you of that tune, correct? And there are these children joyously jumping over without a care in the world, which is what children should be, without phones, without technology, out in the open. And it's one of the first proper biodiversity parks done in Mumbai. Every sculpture has a story. And to me, today, whatever you do, whatever artwork you do, whatever you do, it requires a good story. If the story is good, it sort of moves people more. And to me, this is one of the finest examples of that. If you know about the INS Vikrant, we had a very, very powerful aircraft carrier called INS Vikrant, which won us many wars, and it was an absolute legend. And in fact, it was docked in Mumbai a few years back, and it was being planned to use as a museum, which would have been wonderful because it would have taken people through the corridors on the deck, and they could have done some phenomenal things. And suddenly the government decided one fine day to scrap it. And they cut it down and sold it per kilo weight, literally. And this angered not only the people around, but mainly the people who used the ship. So there were these fighter pilots who I knew, headed by Commodore Medioma Bhada, and he came to me and he said this ship was like a mother to them. He's saying when they flew off the decks, he was a fighter pilot, and they returned in the evening, the first thing they would do is go in the mess and have a warm bowl of soup, and they would feel that they had come home to their mother. You know, so it was literally like the mothership, as they call it. And they were feeling very bad that that ship had been sold. So what they did was, they got together, 5 fighter pilots got together, pooled in their own money. They took me to the scrapyard. We selected all the material from there, and we made the memorial of the Vikrant from the scrap of the Vikrant itself. So that is what it is. So to me, it's a wonderful story. So everything that you see there is a part of the great ship that was there, even the anchor chain and everything, including the crest. So just few more photographs of the same. So basically, it's the story. It's always the story. And in any good piece of architecture, art, film, anything, if it hits you, the story hits you, and you start believing in it, it sort of alleviates itself from a normal work of art to being a phenomenal work of art. You know? And this is one piece which I just carved in my pastime. And I always put this for last, just to say that before anyone in the audience looks like this, I'm going to end. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So Arzan, what inspires your stories, and how do you make your sculpture tangible? How do you make those tangible then?
So basically, I think if you ask any creative person, your observation has to be at peak. So I feel that you just need to observe things and take in. And when you develop as an artist, I think automatically that happens. You don't need to look around left and right. Things hit you, which you see, and you sort of take in yourself. Nowadays, of course, you've got your cell phone, so you can photograph it. But years of observation, walking through the city, seeing a dog sitting on a car, seeing this person smoking in a balcony. You know, it could be anything. It is all these images of the city, everything that combine. My muse is the city. Okay, so everyone asks me what inspires you. I think it is the chaotic city you stay in. It's a fallacy to think that only if you're sitting on a quiet beach with some soft music and listening to the waves, your inspiration strikes. It does not. It just strikes you at any point of time. You don't even know when it's hitting you. So I guess everything, all those things combined together give you these images. Now, all these pieces that I showed you are custom-made pieces, correct? I have my shows every 3 years, 5 years. Now there, I just create whatever I want, correct? So it is ideas which I've been collecting and which I put forward, and all the pieces that come out at that time follow that same language. So there are different variations of the same language. Like, for example, I was talking to Viraj, and she was telling me about this show which I did in 2016. I love punning with words, okay? And the whole show was about my wordplay in my visuals. So it was all humor based and all that. It came out automatically. Prior to that, I did a show where I did only walls, abstract walls. And it was basically, the idea was that they say walls have ears, correct? So I said that the walls that you live in and you stay around and you work in don't only have ears. They take in everything that you have said. They take in the visuals, they take in the smells, what you have cooked, they take in the everything, the aromas. And then one fine day, take that concrete wall and dip it in acid and get it out. And what you'll see there is all your memories inside. So that's what the show was about. So it's basically whatever hits you, and touch wood, it comes automatically. I see an empty space and the image appears. So it's good.
That's wonderful. And how do you negotiate, most of the work you are doing for like institutes or other, how do you negotiate your way?
So they approach me. When you
How
say,
do you, there has to be some convincing on your part.
doesn't require too much, no.
There's a go for it.
They call me, of course, and I give them a sketch. So I come from a day and age where I still use the pencil. I cannot start drawing or conceptualizing on the computer. Even I find even using the pencil on Procreate a little difficult. I like that, the scratch of that charcoal against the paper. And if I have to do that, I sit with lots of paper, large paper, and I start rubbing my charcoal, and that's what I create. And most of the time, 99% of the time, that sketch is good enough to convince the client that he should make that piece.
So the charcoal hits
Through
them.
the charcoal, yes.
Thank you very much,
you.
Arzan.
Thank you. Yep, there's one question. Some question there.
Sorry. Love your pieces.
Thank you.
Beautiful work.
Thank you.
Absolutely. How do you also translate to, I wouldn't say, you are designing with your own visuals, your own mind and creating. How does that, how is that bringing or invoking feelings in the occupants itself? Because now that we are talking about commercial or hospitality, those sculptures or, whatever that you create, like a piece of art, it also is there to invoke some sort of feeling for the occupants, and there has to be some journey which is very personal, which comes with their own experience. How do you think you get that in your pieces? And how do you think you could make it more interactive? Because right now, the pieces are there. What people usually do is, I want to capture myself with that art or picture. So I'll just take a photo of me with that. The idea would be also to create something which is going to be for the occupants, not just interpretation, but for the interaction also. Would you be working or, looking forward to that? Can we look forward to that?
The dialogues that I have with the clients are lengthy. It could be a piece that is 6 inches which sits on the top of his bar, or it could be a 40-footer which is in his garden. So I always say that I'm lucky that literally every client who starts off as a client, and even before the sketch is approved and I start making it, they become good friends. You understand? And it is 100% that the feeling which they want to invoke from the sculpture which they want will come out. Like, for example, someone wanted a mother and child, and she spoke to me about where she had come from. She was a Filipino woman, and what happened and how she went through the hardships and then traveled somewhere, and then, as luck would have it, got married to a very affluent family and came back. So this is the first time she had a home. And she wanted to depict the mother and child because according to her, it was the son that drove her through her. She told me stories. And so you can imagine, when someone tells you such personal stories, automatically that sculpture will 100% evoke that feeling when it comes to, because the sketch itself will show that I've got the idea of what you are saying and what I wanted. And so it is interactive there and there, And coming to the part where people today only take selfies, that part, the fault is with them, not the sculpture. So it is crazy. Literally, we pretend to say that we are moving ahead with age and this and that. I was in Rajasthan right now. There's a beautiful old Samod or something. There's a beautiful old heritage village. You should see how terribly the tourists treated. And which tourists? Sorry to say, the Indian tourists. Terrible, terrible. They are occupying, they stand in one archway and they take a selfie. Then someone goes and checks it. No, not proper. Again, another one. Another one, another one, another one. I'm waiting there with the camera to see whether she moves out so I can get to see the architecture and not their faces, you know. So the fault is in that. I don't know what thrill they get in seeing their own bloody face over and over again. Anyway. Thank you. Done? Sorry. Okay. So I normally detest it when, come Viraj, come. When someone says, I want to create a sculpture and I want to make it a selfie point. Why the hell do you want to make it a selfie point? You know, make it a statement, you know. Thank you.